Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an airline pilot, and welcome to tutorial number 6 for the TFDI ND11. We are all the way forward to our downwind right now on the Rokill 26 transition for the ILS approach runway 26 right at Munich Airport. Now, on this point, we are going to explore a couple of the manual modes. So you can see right now we're in profile mode, which still expects us to fly all the way straight and then come back for the ILS. We are, however, very likely going to get some shortcuts, so let's just go into the idle descent mode, which is somewhat similar to how a VNAV descent or a level change descent or an open descent in Airbuses would work. So we take the knob, click it and pull down. That simulates pulling the knob out, which is how we are going to enter this mode. You can see the FMA is changed to idle, and now it's basically pitching in order to reach its target airspeed, thereby enabling a little bit quicker descent. While we're decelerating, we are passing through 10,000 feet, so we're going to turn on the lights, and in this case it's going to be both landing lights, the nose light and the runway turn-off lights coming on. We also check that the seatbelt sign is turned on at this moment. When all of that is done, we can go ahead and complete the descent checklist that we started a little bit earlier on the descent preparation tutorial. So let's go ahead and complete that now. Remember, we stopped the checklist at the seatbelts, so we can, now that we're cleared to an altitude, set our local QNH, which is 1013, and we can continue the checklist. Altimeters 1013 set and cross-checked. Hydraulic panel, auto, exterior lights, on. And that's the descent checklist completed down to this point. Okay, so while we're still flying on the downwind, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming landing. We're already below the slats extent and the gear extension speed, so we can start our deceleration and extending our flaps fairly early onwards. Now, the MD-11 is one of those special airplanes to land. It's rather unstable on the approach, and small inputs can cause large deviations. So for that reason, I would recommend that you start doing a couple of automatic approaches to see how exactly the airplane wants to be flown before then turning manual. Now, the auto land on this airplane is quite easy. You press the approach and land button. It is going to arm the localizer and the glide slope, it will intercept, and then everything is going to run automatically, so you don't need to do anything in order to conduct an automatic landing. For manual landing, which we are going to do today, we basically follow the same procedure. We press the approach and land button, that's going to automatically arm the ILS. We will intercept and keep the approach mode engaged and the autopilot engaged until we are all the way stabilized on the approach, and only then we are going to disconnect the automatics and going to perform a manual landing. Now, for the approach itself, we are going to start configuring the airplane a little bit earlier than what we are used to from other aircraft, like for example the Boeing 737. We are also approaching 1000 to go, so let's just go to the vertical speed knob and just dial in -1000, and that is how you enter vertical speed. So you don't select the mode, you just use the wheel to select your target vertical speed, and then VS mode engages automatically. So that's about as easy as it gets. Now, for the landing itself, keep in mind we're flying a wide-body airplane, and if you look at the weight indication over here, we're at 172.4 tons at the moment. That means slowing the plane down isn't quite that easy, and therefore we are going to configure a little bit earlier. The latest point where you should aim to lower the landing gear is approximately when the radio altitude 2500 call comes, or about 7 or 8 miles out. That's in order to build up drag early and in order to prepare the plane early for your upcoming arrival. So, we are abeam the final approach fix, so let's go ahead and go into heading mode and set our target heading, which is going to be right now 170 degrees. This is also a good point to start decelerating, so let's pull out the speed window and dial in some slower airspeed. We're going to start with a base of about 200 knots, and since we are below the slat extension speed, let's go slats extend. At this point, also verify that you've put the dial flap selector into the 15 position. The 15 position is often used for approaches as an intermediate flap setting, so be sure that you've got that selected down here. Also, let's do a little bit of cleanup work on the FMS by going direct to GUDAG so that we've got LNAV guidance available should we aim to use it. Alright, so you can see flap 15 speed is up there, so let's go flaps 15. And as we're approaching the final approach course, let's turn right onto a heading of 230 and then re-establish ourselves on the ILS approach. Remember, in the MD-11, after you have dialed the heading in, you also need to pull the knob so that the airplane actually starts the turn. So that's a little specialty here of the MD-11 versus some other aircraft. We're now nicely on an intercept heading, so let's arm the approach knob. And you can see we've got localizer capture straight away, land mode is armed, and we're still holding 5,000 feet. Like that, the airplane is now automatically going to intercept the approach course. Also, by pressing the FMS speed button once again, we are now reducing to our landing speed. And like that, we can start intercepting the final a little bit earlier. Something I noticed on the TFDI is sometimes it went to flap 14, even though down here we have certainly selected 15, so we might just have to select it a little bit more. And when you do that, it is a good idea to put the flap lever back into retract and then back out again. Like that, we're now getting flap 15. So if that happens to you, that is something you take into consideration. So glide slope is captured, go around altitude 5000 set, and now look at this. With the glide slope captured, 0 wind condition, thrust idle, and flaps 15, the airplane is basically maintaining its airspeed on the final, if not even slightly accelerating. For that reason, we need to lower the landing gear early enough so that we can decelerate and then go through the 1000 foot approach gate while we are stable. So keep that in mind when you are planning your approach preparation. You will remember that on narrow body aircraft you can use a stable gate of 500 feet for the approach in VMC conditions. In wide body aircraft, due to the increased mass and therefore the slower response of the airplane, you probably want to use that 1000 foot gate for any approach. Okay, 2500, gear down. You can see we're below the flap 28 speed, so let's go flaps 28. Here we go. Landing gear is showing 4 greens, that's our sign to arm the spoilers. And here you can see how slow the airplane is decelerating. That's what I meant why we want to start configuring the airplane for the final approach pretty early, because it's got a huge lot of mass and therefore it decelerates rather slowly over here. Okay, flaps 35, and that is our final flap setting. So at this point we once again make sure the auto brakes are armed, and we've got the auto brake min message showing down here. That is perfect. Then let's go ahead and read the landing checklist. Landing gear down, 4 green, spoilers armed, auto brakes low, flaps 35, altimeters 1013 cross checked, EAD checked before landing checklist complete. Alright, you can see we just about reached our final approach speed at just about 1000 feet, so we didn't start configuring
1000.
Checked. So we didn't start configuring a moment too early. Alright, so let's go ahead and take over manually now.
Autopilot.
So autopilot and auto thrust are off. Again, the 11 is pretty is a little beep to fly on approach, so be careful when you're doing this. Be sure it's kept in trim. Be sure you're keeping it on speed. Remember to flare at about 40 feet. You need those additional 10 feet over the standard flare that you are used to from other aircraft. Checked. Because of the higher mass of your wide body plane here. Okay, continue. Below 200, don't aim to chase the glide slope anymore.
50, 40.
Alright, 40.
20,
Flare, idle. And we're down. Okay, reversers are out. Decelerating nicely. Be sure to keep that nose wheel on the ground. 80 knots. Manual brakes. Auto brake disarm. And then we're going to go for the next exit. Maximum 60 knots when turning onto an exit, but you can use less as well. Normally in the A330 we would aim for 30 knots, so that does seem to work pretty nicely in the MD-11 as well. And here we go, the runway is vacated. So that's gonna be it for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, then do let me know in the comments below. I'm looking forward to read your inputs on this one, and as always, if you like the video, be sure to leave a like on YouTube as well, as it does help out the channel quite a lot. Remember to subscribe if you're up for more, and finally, if you really like the video, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you for watching, and see you all again on the next one.